We're cooking 100 years of Michelin Star dishes, recreating the best meals from every decade of the prestigious guide. The Michelin Star system is recognised as gold standard of cooking around the world. But what were the iconic dishes from every decade?
First, we're going to start with 1920s. So the Michelin Guide started as a guide for a French tyre company in order to sell more tyres. The guide started in 1900. The first stars were awarded in 1926, of which there were 46 given out. And then it wasn't until 1931 when they started doing almost like a tiered system with 3 stars awarded to the best restaurants. It is all started by a tyre company as a marketing exercise. Why are we doing lobster thermidor? It's a symbol of opulence and luxury. This is definitely one of the dishes that would have been around on the menus of contemporary restaurants at the time, whilst Michelin were awarding their first of their stars. When we were doing some research for this video, we even called Michelin up to try and get a definitive answer of which restaurant was the earliest one. So basically, we have a YouTube channel and we're doing a video. Head of press team said that they could get us an answer by Feb, so I thoroughly believe that even Michelin don't really know. Prepped our lobsters, killed them, we've cut them in half. This is what we're going to use to make our lobster thermidor. First, we're just going to make the mix, which is basically the claw meat goes into a bowl, and then we're going to add a little bit of bechamel, but it's just got a little bit of bisque, which we make by using the shells. It's heavy on Dijon mustard and a few spices. So in here we've got our lobster meat and a nice bit of the lobster bechamel. This is a version of a recipe that we found via Escoffier. It's pretty true to what you would have seen on the menus in fine dining restaurants all across Paris. Now, obviously, we would call it retro, but back then you can imagine it was very cutting edge. So there's 100 different ways to make the lobster thermidor, but this is the very classic way. We're putting the spike in there to keep the nice shape. What we're going to do is turn out the fillets once they're cooked, carve them, and then gratinate the claw meat with this bechamel inside the head. Okay, so we're going to place our lobsters under the grill. And to be honest, this wouldn't be too far dissimilar to what they would have used. They probably would have baked this in the oven as well. These are just going to really gently cook under the grill. Okay, so once they're like partially cooked, what we're going to do is just flip them over. Release that meat on the other side, but not overcook the tail. So quite likely what you would have had is a waiter would have come table side and served up this lobster, which would be carved out of the shell. And I guess this is what Michelin sort of defines so well. 1 star is a trip you would stop on your way. A 2-star is worth making a detour for. And then a 3-star is a specific trip which you plan in advance to go to there for an experience. This is very much what the privilege would have been eating, not in any way, shape, form the normal classes. What we're going to do is just going to take out that meat delicately, and then that spike just helps as well, because then you can just pull it out in one go. You can remove the spike at that point. Just lay a small amount of the lobster bechamel all the way down the length with a little bit more in the head, and this is going to melt and flavour that meat as it cooks. Let's load up this head with this stunning claw meat, which has been cooked in a courbouillon. So that's a little bit of fish stock in there, and then lots of different vegetables. With all these classical recipes, there's always layers and layers to the way they build the dishes. And adding a courbouillon when you cook your lobster is just that extra little step that adds just this really awesome flavour. The fat from this bechamel just works so well with the lobster because it traps in all that flavour as it gently cooked. Get this nice and hot, and then we'll add the tail back in to serve it, carve this lobster, and then this would have been sort of distributed at table side. This is all high class people. You don't want to have to get your bib out and do like a shellfish boil. What we've got here is like this gentle gratination of that sauce that we added. And then what we're going to do is just add in tails, the opposite tail back in. It looks very natural, but obviously there's absolutely nothing natural about it. Just going to take some Gruyere, and this is just for the sort of final touching of gratination as that lobster tail heats through as well. We've got the Gruyere on there, and then it goes back under. In order to plate up, just have them opposing sides. It's completely timeless, you know. It's such a stunning dish. And garnish was one of those things, I think sometimes it can seem a little bit old-fashioned, but still 100% has a place. The luxury in this dish is in the technique behind it and the ingredients used. So, 1920s lobster thermidor done. Ooh. I wonder if they were paying the same that we're paying for lobster at the moment. These are £29 a kilo. It's such a luxurious dish. Probably the second time I ever made it. I would definitely make it again. Now it's so involved in British culture.
But also, I bet you there's a lot of shit ones out there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I almost wouldn't trust people to make it properly. Whereas back in the 1920s.
What do they say? Don't mess with a classic.
Delicious.
Next up, 1930s. Welcome to the era of traditional, flavour-led luxury. The very famous poulet de Brest chicken translates to breast chicken in half mourning. So this dish was made famous by a chef called Eugénie Brazier. She was from Lyon. She had 2 restaurants, both by the same name, called La Mère Brazier, both of which had 3 Michelin stars, one of which is still open to this day and still has this dish on the menu. It's famed the world round for being one of the finest chickens you can buy. It's from the Brest region in eastern France, near Lyon. When you buy this chicken, it's dressed perfectly. It still has the feet on, so you can see the freshness. Beautifully trussed here. So what we've done here is we've taken some softened butter, black truffles, and we've just released the surface of the breast and massaged the truffle and the butter underneath the skin. So this dish is all about the gentle poaching of this beautiful chicken in our stock with some onion, some thyme, and some white wine. So this era embodies the move away from lavish luxury and ostentatious presentations and service styles to more ingredient-led cookery, focusing more on the subtle aromas and balancing of the aromas with the quality ingredients. I'm just going to take some white onion, lifting the chicken slightly off the base of the pan, making sure we cook it really nice and delicate. Some thyme, season the chicken all over, generous glug of white wine into the bottom of our pan, followed by our chicken, probably about a litre or so of chicken stock. We just want to almost just cover the base of the chicken, baste it a few times while it's cooking. We're going to cook it at 120 degrees. Very gently. The management of the low temperature is going to help the truffle permeate into the fibres of the chicken. In France at this period, we had the very more male-dominated haute cuisine, which sort of stemmed from luxury Paris. So Eugénie Brazier, her cooking was very much steeped in Lyonnaise tradition, more regional cooking style. Cover the pan. This should hopefully take about 2 hours. Okay, so to serve with our poulet de Bresse en demi-duel, classic sauce. So this is her version of a sauce albufera. A touch of brandy, Madeira, equal quantities. Her version is slightly different in the fact that it uses, we are going to use foie gras as a thickening agent for the sauce at the end, instead of a more traditional roux-based sauce. I'm going to go in with my brown chicken stock, a touch of cream, lots of black pepper. We're going to remove our poulet de Bresse from the oven. We're just going to let our chicken rest there now. Beautifully tender. Going to go with a little knob of butter on a low heat. We're just then going to add our foie gras. This has just been deveined, and then we're just going to emulsify that in. And this is the foie gras will help to thicken the sauce, yeah. Thickening. It's almost got a gloss to it, which comes from the fat. So we've just got a few little vegetables just to heat up to go with our garnish. Now we're just going to carve the chicken off the bone. You can always smell, the smell of this chicken is just incredible. We've got our beautiful leg, French style presentation. Just letting all the ingredients sing for themselves. We've got one of the best chickens in the world. Lovely, fresh, seasonal vegetables. Beautiful truffles permeating through the skin of the chicken. Albufera style sauce. I don't know how much these chickens cost, but I want to say like 30 quid a chicken. Perfectly cooked chicken. Chicken's poached as well. You can't even just forget about that. Poaching a whole chicken, I mean, it's not something I'd actually never do, but why not?
It's an amazing celebratory dish.
Next up, the 40s.
Let's talk about what happened in the 1940s. Obviously, Europe was a bit preoccupied during the 1940s because of that naughty little angry Austrian. The Michelin Guide didn't stop. They actually helped during the war effort, the Allied troops, because they provided roadmap for the Allies on the D-Day landing, which were really integral and useful in the war. During the occupation, there were still actually restaurants feeding German troops, and you can see there's a catalogue of restaurants listed in like German guides to Paris. They didn't stop trading during that time. They just fed rich Germans rather than rich Parisians, rich Nazis. After the war, a really important figure started to come about in the culinary world, which is a guy called Raymond Olivier, the Bordeaux region of France, the son of a chef, and he actually started an apprenticeship under his father at the age of 15, much like our beloved co-host on this channel, Jack Croft. So this is one of his most famous dishes. So this is Pigeon Prince René III. Dish that was created in his restaurant that was awarded Michelin Stars in 1948, and it was to celebrate the marriage of Prince René III, probably the most famous actress in the world, Grace Kelly. Squab pigeon, which is a type of pigeon. It's a different breed of pigeon that's been essentially a domesticated farm pigeon. Deboned, and then we've trussed it. So we've taken out all of the sinews. We've stuffed it with a chicken mousseline, which has been cut with a beautiful little bit of foie gras, some goose liver, some black truffle. This is everything that wartime wasn't. This is opulence, wealth, luxury. The restaurant itself was called Le Grand Le Four in Paris. Raymond Olivier was probably the first celebrity chef Raymond Oliver was the first ever chef to have a TV show. This is kind of where chefing comes out of the kitchen a little bit more. The celebrity status didn't start with Marco and Gordon, as you can often think about. It actually started much earlier, and especially in France. Squab pigeon is a really difficult meat to cook because it's super lean, but it's got a really beautiful flavour. So all we're actually doing is getting colour on these ballantines, but we're centering the colour to the area where the chicken mousse went in first. They're focusing a little bit more on farm to table, a little bit less on the old luxuries of the sort of the grandeur of the past, and moving towards some slightly more modern styles. So this just goes in the oven now, just to cook lightly through. So foie gras is obviously a little bit of a contentious ingredient nowadays, cruel the way they do it. Feed a goose in order to get the saturation of fat. It is an ingredient that's not fashionable in any way, shape, form to use anymore, and I kind of think with good reason. Really doesn't need much heat. It'll naturally sort of melt at room temp. So just a good hit of salt and pepper in the same basting juices as our pigeon, and then just slightly agitate it and move it around, just so you get a really beautiful golden crust all the way over it. I always rest my foie gras quite nicely. Splash of Madeira, and then just burn off that alcohol. I've got some nicely reduced chicken stock here. Okay, so we've not reduced this too much. Should be a nice. So we had a look at a few different ways of plating it, and I think there's been different iterations of it. We just wanted to kind of do like an old school plate. So this is a blackberry gel, taking off the ties, keeps the whole thing in place whilst it's cooking. Gonna go on one side of the plate, and it would have just been incredibly simple how you would have done it. I think I'll just carve it just to show the cross section. I mean, can you imagine trying to put this on the menu here? Absolutely crazy. All primo ingredients.
It just goes to show you how like groundbreaking they were at the time, because dishes like this are still seen on menus today.
It's one of those things never going to go on the menu, but it's a beautiful archive of an amazing dish.
Welcome to 1950s France. Bouillard en vessie, chicken in a bag. This dish was created by Fernand Point, who was a legendary French chef who ran a restaurant called La Pyramide, which was awarded 3 Michelin stars. It was the restaurant that was owned by his parents. And this is one of his famous dishes. So it's basically, we have a whole breast chicken, as we used in the 30s. We released the skin from the breast, and we placed some sliced black truffle underneath, along with some butter. So in the cavity of our chicken, we've got some shallot, we've got some hard herbs, some rosemary and some thyme. And we're gonna very gently slide it into our pig's bladder. So our bladder has been soaked in cold water, and we've cut the top to be able to fit the chicken in. Cooking in a pig's bladder, it comes from it's a very historic way of cooking. We're leaving the feet and the wings on for our presentation. We just need to be careful that they don't pierce the bag. So into our bag, we're going to season our chicken. So it's a little bit like cooking something on papillote, but obviously in a more theatrical way. A little bit of morel juice, or you could use truffle juice. They might have used as well in the times. We've got a small glug of Madeira, brandy or cognac, and then a little bit of white wine also. And the chicken is going to steam within inside the bladder and absorb all of those lovely flavourings that we put in. So we really want to make sure here that the seal is really, really tight so that no steam can escape. Okay, so we're now going to place our chicken into our stock, like so. And the bag will inflate as the chicken steams. This style of cooking in the bladder is sort of like the real first sort of steps of chemistry sort of slowly started seeping into kitchens. Hush, little chicken, don't you cry, Daddy's gonna buy you a truffle pie. This has been cooking now for about 2 hours. We are now ready to serve. So they usually serve it at table side, and then the big reveal is when you cut the top off. So we're gonna capture all the juices in the pan so we can make our sauce. So the chicken is almost plumped up. So we're just gonna reduce our cooking liquor. I've seen methods of this where they would then reduce this table side and make the sauce in a pan at the table. So into our sauce, we've got a few morel mushrooms. We've got a little bit of cream, a little bit of butter, and we'll finish it with some final seasoning. It's regional, it's seasonal, it's flavour. The chicken has more texture.
I think the important thing is, it seems almost like a gimmick, but it's not.
But it's almost like very first iterations of sous vide.
Yeah, actually, that's true. The amount of work it takes to do and the amount of like sheer diligence you have to have whilst you're cooking it, I probably wouldn't do it again.
But I would use the same flavour combos.
Next up, it's 1960.
1960, Paul Bocuse. So, signature dish for him is a red mullet. So in total, he held 3 Michelin stars for 55 years, which is an insane achievement. And this dish was on the menu, and I think it's still on the menu today. And again, it is in Lyon. So you can see a bit of a trend here. Lyon is obviously one of the sort of like, I guess it's the epicenter for food and cooking in the 60s. Just a lot more of like an open border, open-minded kind of era. And people like Paul Bocuse started making a name for themselves, just doing something a little bit more interesting and unique. Essentially, it is quite a simple dish to make. Really, you start with these potatoes, which just blanch until they're cooked. So the red mullet we've just portioned, so that just involves prepping down the spine, taking the fillet off, and then we've just pin boned it as well. Okay, so we've boiled these, and now we've just taken them out, put them into ice water, and what we're looking for is these like really nice discs. We've got a slurry of potato and clarified butter, and then we're just adding our potatoes into there as well. It'll look like fish scales eventually when it's done. But it's quite an elegant presentation, and red mullet is beautiful on its own. What are you going to do to charge the prices of a 3 Michelin star restaurant and justify your Michelin stars? Layer it painstakingly with tiny little rondelles of potato. Best fact of the day. This is the guy who Ratatouille is based off. Paul Bocuse was trained by Eugène Brazier. He then went on to train the next generation of chefs as well. So lots of people went through his kitchens. Quite a simple sauce. Oranges, juice them directly into a pan. 1 sprig of rosemary. Just go in with a splash of nolly prat. Really beautiful ingredient to use in Delphish cookery and very traditional. Add in a little bit of creme fraiche right at the end. So you don't need a huge amount, just a little bit. I suppose the elegance of the fish is what you're really trying to showcase here. The initial stage of cooking. It's just a really delicate way to cook the fish. And then what I'm going to do is just add a few flats. This is all about trying to get a nice even coverage. Probably the most delicate technique we've sort of tried to showcase so far. So at this stage, we've got foundational colour on the base of these potatoes, and now I'm just going to take it off the grease proof and lay it back into the pan and turn the heat up slightly. I'm going to start to cook the fish on the other side. Lay it onto a flat whilst I get the rest of the plate prepared. It's almost like fluorescent sauce that we're just going to do on one side of the plate. Just take a bit of veal jus and then just lightly. At the moment, red mullet is an interesting one because it's not in season all the time. In the UK, you can get it for a very an okay price in the middle of the season. All of it goes to Europe because they love it so much. It's got a bit of like a retro. Right, next up, 1970s.
Welcome to 1970s London. The Roux brothers have arrived on the London culinary scene. They were the first Michelin star restaurant in the UK with their restaurant Le Gavroche. So the dish we're doing today is a twice-baked soufflé. It symbolises heavy French technique style cookery, but yet slightly designed to more British tastes. So we're going to start off making a roux, ironically so, roux for the Roux brothers. Oi, oi. You'll probably still find it on many pub restaurants, small little restaurants all around the country as a sort of staple, and the Roux brothers brought it to the UK. First Michelin star, 2 brothers, who then went on to have 2 sons who sort of took the mantle on from them. But there was 3 Michelin stars for a long time, and then it unfortunately dropped down to 2. It just recently closed this year. It was my first ever Michelin star meal. My dad took me there on my 16th birthday, and I always remember I went actually. We came out to London for the day, and turned up in my shirt and my little trousers, and then we got to the door, and then they said you can't come in if you don't have a dinner jacket. So I had to borrow one from the reception. Trained so many of our country's finest chefs, from Marco, from Gordon. We're gonna add white pepper and a little bit of paprika to our bechamel, a little bit of mustard, and our cheese. French Gruyere, which is a hard Alpine style cheese. So we've beaten our egg whites. Next up, we're gonna add our egg yolks into the bechamel. Beat that in nicely. So now we're going to add egg white, so on and so forth until all of your egg white is incorporated. And we're just going to put our souffle mix into the molds, into an oven preset at 160 degrees. Then we're going to pour it into our molds, into our bain-marie for about 10 to 12 minutes. They will shrink slightly, the idea being that we're cooking them 75% of the way. And then when you bake them the second time, they rise again. If you cook them all the way the first time, they won't rise again. Cream goes on, cheese goes in, and then that gets baked again in the oven. This has been in the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. Garnished with a few chives. The souffle has risen again. Beautiful, nice and light. Still got beautiful wobble to it, nice and crispy on the top. Pretty good. I mean, it's good. Not my personal taste, but
Just feeling a little bit more rustic, unless you get across the pond to the UK.
I mean, it's weird that this was a 3 Michelin star dish because it feels to me more like, without sounding rude, it sounds more like a pub dish. It feels more like a pub dish.
Really? Yeah, when you've seen the intricate sauces
Yeah,
and
like
the
levels of like veal stock, infusions, truffle, and like fat emulsification.
Simple, delicious, just not as groundbreaking as the rest. Next up, the 1980s. Okay, so this is one that I'm really excited for. So this is the 80s Marco Pierre White. Not many of you know this, but before Gordon's sort of rise to fame in that documentary format, there was a BBC documentary about Marco, which was awesome. So this is one of his signature dishes. It's actually a really simple dish. Essentially a beurre blanc, super simple. Just made with some softening shallots and a little bit of butter and some white wine. He trained with Albert Roux. So there's a connection there between the restaurants that have come before. All of these restaurants and all of these chefs are connected. He sort of rewrote the rule book. Up until now, I guess, the perception was that kitchens are a quiet, sort of harmonious place. Always with Marco, you were treading a line between genius and madness. So Harvey's was his first restaurant, opened 87, was awarded his first star in 88, and then it wasn't until 90s that he was awarded his second star. He was the first chef to get 3 Michelin stars. I think he was 29, so it made him the youngest at the time. Infamously, he gave his stars back. The reason he did that was because he said that it's not fair that he is cooking for people who know a hell of a lot less than him. He's a very humble guy. So he shook our oysters, and it's just draining off over the steamer tray. These are going to be used for presentation later. Shallots reducing a little bit of a beurre blanc. Right, so we're just going to fold up this, and we're going to make a really nice tagliatelle. So obviously Marco is Italian in his heritage. There's always a little bit of like a Mediterranean sort of twist in his food. We have our shallots, a little bit of white wine reduced, just butter, lemon juice, and a little bit of vinegar. Bit of a strange dish. Like, it's one of those things I think you have to, taste to sort of really understand it, because it feels like a lot of different influences from a lot of different places. Our oysters, the oyster jus, that's what almost finishes that sauce. And then we're just warming these through really lightly. And pasta goes in, a little bit of caviar. I think first time we've actually had the caviars so far, which is a bit of a surprise. Rock salt goes on a plate. Lay your shells back in. So just turning around some of the tagliatelle nicely, and then just lightly releasing it into the shell. Just reflected on this dish as being one of his signature dishes. It would be an absolute nightmare to do this properly on service. Cucumber for the top of caviar. To put it into perspective, this is about £70 worth of caviar at the moment going onto this dish. Marco Pierre White's tagliatelle of oysters.
I'm mind blown.
That's actually the most surprising thing I put in my mouth.
It's mental.
If you think about all these rules that would have been set up until this time with haute cuisine, and it would have been very avant-garde on the day. Now when we look at it, it almost seems a little bit retro, but it was proper cutting edge at the time, like proper breakthrough stuff.
It's pretty cutting edge, yeah.
It's
Mad
delicious.
flavoured.
I mean, if you get that served in a restaurant right now, it would actually still blow my mind.
Yeah, it'll go viral.
Respect, Marco. Big respect. Next, we're going to the 90s.
Pew! We're in the 1990s with Gordon Ramsay. Very famous restaurateur, TV personality, you name it, national icon. Protege and friend of Marco.
This is Gordon.
In the 90s, Gordon had his first restaurant, Aubergine, where he had 2 Michelin stars. And the 90s really symbolises his quest on the journey of Michelin and that elusive 3rd Michelin star. So we are doing a lobster ravioli. In this recipe of Gordon's, he uses a saffron reduction in the base to add to the colour. And also he uses the best quality rich egg yolks he can find. So into Gordon's ravioli, we have a beautiful mix of langoustine lobster and also scallop mousse. And that's going to sit inside of our ravioli dough. We've obviously got beautiful Italian influences with the pasta dough. We've then got British flair with a young chef, local ingredients, innovative dining room, and then we've got the traditional French techniques of the mousse and the shellfish and the bisque flavours. Cutting out our circles, and then I'm just going to roll it in the next setting down one more time. So we're going to go with 65 grams of our filling. So now we're just going to Gently seal all the way around. So we're making our lemongrass velouté next. So I've got some coriander, white pepper, garlic, and some lemongrass. We've now got our first sort of Asian influences that we're going into here. Next up, we've got vermouth. Once the flame's gone, we're gonna add our fish stock and reduce by half. We've now got the introduction of more spices, more aromats, and then just building different layers of flavor on top of those base classics. Double cream. So into our jug, we've got some chervil, and we've got a little bit of blanched spinach, and we're going to strain our stock into the blender and blend it to a smooth green sauce, which is going to be the base. So that's going to get passed straight onto our green herb mix. So we're going to pop my ravioli into the shimmering water. That's probably going to take around about 3 minutes to cook. So our pasta is really gently poached, dressing of olive oil. We've got a lovely, beautiful lobster bisque made from all the bones of the lobster. Some crispy basil. So here we have it, the rise of the 3-star young budding chef, Gordon Ramsay. It's lighter, it's slightly more refreshing, like with the lemongrass and the acidity and stuff.
It ticks every box for like a new age, refined, sort of modern London, I guess. You can see how this, you know, yes, we wasn't the first one to make a raviolo. You know, Marco trained him to make this, but like at the same time, it's like, it is its own little spin on it, you know, it's changed things slightly. And that's what all these chefs seem to do. Take little bits that they like from the last person and then refine.
We're heading into the new millennium with arguably the godfather of molecular gastronomy.
2000s, and we are going to a restaurant. We felt it wasn't right to do this without mentioning El Bulli. So El Bulli has had a profound impact on the restaurant world, mainly because it is the birthplace of molecular gastronomy. Now this is their most famous dish, however, it did not come onto the menu until 2005. And it kind of typifies a lot of their techniques. This is their famous spherified or spherical olive. So it's made using green olives from their region in Spain. And importantly, they've had a restaurant since late 70s with Michelin Stars. In 2005, they became their best restaurant in the world. So what we're doing is just blitzing up this is xanthan gum. So xanthan gum just slightly thickens this. So after we put our xanthan in, we were going to put our glutamate. But it's really important that you properly mix this in. Technically, what is molecular gastronomy? So basically, it's just the idea that there's lots of different techniques that were being used, classical cooking techniques, but this is really getting down into the science of why cooking works. So we've got our glucanol lactate and we've got our alginate in this bath here, and then we've mixing out more glucanol lactate, and we've got some xanthan gum into our olive juice. And this tasting it now, I'm not gonna lie, tastes a little bit strange. It's just very briny and very salty. And it's the idea that kind of nothing is really what it seems, and that science can kind of alter our perception and tastes to create a really unique and interesting experience. One thing that you can really reflect on is that experience is really, really important to diners. People are always looking for that new and exciting thing, so you can see how this could easily come into the sort of zeitgeist of cooking. What you actually do is just create a little well on the top, almost have to force it in there quite quick, flip it over in the alginate. So we'll leave this in here just for 15 seconds. Right, and there we go. So we lifted it up, it's got this outside sort of shell that's formed, and then it gets held in some herb-infused olive oil to add and impart an extra level of flavour to it. Okay, so we're going to place these little alginate olives onto our serving spoons.
Molecular olive.
It takes a little bit of time to get used to.
I actually love it. We're there, we're vibing, we're on the table, we're having a bit of lunch. One of these bad boys comes out. I'd really enjoy it.
Happy days.
Happy days. I'll take a bowl, please.
Next up, 2010, arguably the most important chef in our professional careers, the big dog, Heston Blumenthal.
We're in 2010, Bray, just outside London, on the River Thames. A British chef has taken the world by storm. 3 Michelin stars, awarded to Heston Blumenthal for his innovative cooking at the Fat Duck. Will and I both worked for Heston at his London outpost, Dinner by Heston Blumenthal. And this dish snail porridge really captured the imagination of the 2010 diners. The base of this dish is a snail stock, very similar fashion to that of chicken stock, with snails, herbs, and vegetables in there for infusion. So there's many molecular sort of techniques and processes to this dish. Carries on from that El Bulli era of the 2000s. So we've got one of the main elements of this dish we have is a parsley butter. That parsley butter is going to form the basis of the porridge, along with porridge oats, which have been sieved. So we're going to season our snail stock, or Heston's restaurants in general are famed for multi-sensory dining. So he has a dish called Sound of the Sea. While you're eating a dish of different seafoods and shellfish, the diner wears an iPod and listens to sounds of the sea while you're eating. One of the garnishes on this porridge is we have some beautiful French frog's legs, which have been brined, panade here as well. Although Heston received his 3rd star in the 2000s, we've got him down as the most influential chef in the 2010s because we believe that's when he had his biggest impact. His restaurant, The Fat Duck, went back up to 3 stars after losing one for renovations. So frog's legs have been steeped in sort of Michelin heritage. They were on some of the first ever Michelin Star menus. Very Lyonnaise in their heritage, and they're used a lot in France. They are super delicious. They're a bit labor intensive to prepare. Super delicious. So to our porridge, we're going to add our snails, which have been braised, followed by our oats. 10 seconds to the porridge oats before we then add our butter. We had an iteration of this dish at Dinner by Heston, actually. It didn't have the snails, but we did a frog leg. We did just a frog's legs porridge, but made in a very similar way. So this dish is one we made thousands and thousands of times. But when dinner was a busy restaurant, we used to do 300 covers a night at 2 Michelin Star level. Although the dishes sounded weird, they always delivered on flavour. Got some fresh herbs, some fresh parsley at the end. Just reiterating that parsley flavour. So you want your porridge to have a little bit of liquid to it. It will continue to thicken slightly as it sits. So on top of that, I'm going to add our shaved fennel. We have some really fine chiffonade Parma ham, and then finally our frog's legs.
And we're going down making this every day.
I remember watching you go down making it.
Way!
It's a mad creation. I mean, it's not a Wednesday night dinner, but for a once a year celebratory meal.
You've almost got the El Bulli in terms of the molecular gastronomy technique, but it's also similar to the Marco dish in terms of how it combines different flavours and textures, and it all sort of comes together.
Like I always loved that, like triple cooked chips recipe. It featured on dinner's menu, but then it was also in the Crown Pub and it was also in the Heinz Head. Like they're just fucking good recipes.
Yeah.
And they work, and it's like science backed, tried and tested. Like all these elements you can take off and do snails on toast. You could use the parsley butter on another thing, but it's just solid cooking.
2020. There was lots of debate when we were trying to work out the 2021, but ultimately we settled on Claire Smith. Did some work experience in her restaurant, and it was an amazing experience. The potato that's usually served as an entree. So I think what Claire has done in terms of, obviously she worked for Gordon, so you've got this like linear history here between almost all of the restaurants in the UK. These chefs and the traditions, culinary traditions, have just evolved over time, and it's the most important thing that's involved in all kitchens right now still, which is training. This dish is quite interesting as well because it's quite classical. Like, we've gone through the molecular gastronomy stages, and ultimately we've ended now, or we are ending with quite a humble dish, just really well executed. You can basically make a basic beurre blanc. So Claire Smith comes from Ireland, and they're bloody good at growing potatoes in Ireland. These Charlotte potatoes have been cooking in a mixture of shea kombu, confit, so really slowly. The thing about these potatoes is they're very waxy, so they hold their shape really nicely. The only other real ingredients is trout roe, herring roe, and a good amount of caviar. The other thing that's really good about Claire Smith is she's obviously using vegetables as the main source of protein. So whereas we go from the beginning where we've got a poulet de Bresse or an expensive pigeon, or taking something that is very humble in its nature, which is a potato, and treating it with a great deal of respect, I feel is quite a modern thing. Tiny little crisps that she does as well. So you've got a few different textures and sort of iterations of potato. In terms of other chef, for me, the most influential chef as well at the moment in the UK is probably Gareth Warder in Shahal. He's doing some amazing things, but very like Japanese influence. Absolutely love Adam Byatt, but he's been around for ages. Jeremy Chan, who's doing stuff with West African food at the moment. He's got 2 Michelin stars. There's also so many in the world right now that are doing amazing things. So they've been blanched just until they're really nice and crispy. Obviously, you've seen this sauce a few times. I think the one thing that you can appreciate is that mother sauces are still very much in use today. If you want a little refresher on mother sauces tekkers, please click the link in the corner. I'm just gonna add some lemon juice just to finish that at the end. Salt and vinegar seasoning on the crisp. Into the sauce, add some dulse. Adding a tiny bit of kombu into this as well. Chives. Can add dulse beurre blanc, herring roe, trout roe. And I remember doing this and not actually believing how much they actually put on. Secure the crisps into the potato. And then this supports the rest of the garnish. So we've got some little chive tips that go on. Sorrel just adds a little bit of acidity, I always think. She uses dill. I've got a little bit of fennel here instead. I've whipped you up the best potato dish in the world. What's that?
Joel Robuchon mash.
Oh, the big dog. How did we forget? Joel Robuchon is obviously not with us anymore, but unbelievably still has 31 Michelin stars to his name, making him the most successful chef, Michelin chef of all time, even if he has sadly passed away. Send us your favourite chefs, dead or alive, and we will make their signature dishes.
This one is a mad looking thing.
I do like it.
It's delicious.
Really not what I was expecting.
Lobster Thermidor was my favourite classic, and then moving on to the modern ones, I think my favourite is probably the potato.
One of the chickens for me.
I've learned so many different techniques. What I'm reflecting on is that we've missed so many people.
Yeah.
Like Pierre Kaufman, legend to me. But like, even to be honest, we've done one Spanish restaurant. We've done no Italian restaurants. It's important to say it's our most important Michelin dishes from our perspective as English chefs. We've not touched America. We've not touched Thomas Keller. We've not touched Grant Arcatz. We've missed out a few big people, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you want to see us cook up some more old school dishes.
I reckon next time we go to America.
The Big Apple.
Are you vibing, man?